In the last episode, James redeemed himself. In this one, he's truly rewarded for it. We'll try to keep this one a little more brief, but there's always a lot to talk about when Gordon's involved, so timestamps are on screen. We're going to do a quick walkthrough and a bit of a review after. We open this episode with a night shot. James may have proved his worth to the Fat Controller, but the bigger engines won't let him live down his mistakes. Henry and Gordon tease him about his bootlaces incident. James argues, talking of tunnels and hills, but Gordon basically just tells him he's not worth hearing. Gordon monologues about how important he is, that nobody can pull the Express but him. When he's not around, they need 2 engines. He's pulled the Express for years, and never lost his way. He knows, by instinct, where he's going. The narrator calls this out right away, explaining that engines have absolutely no control over this, which is the case. Signalmen do exist. But Gordon is just so arrogant that he seems to believe it in this moment. The next morning, he was still going on. He told James to get his train ready, and off James went. The narrator describes the express coaches as beautiful things with shiny paint and a smooth ride. They're all excited to be going away, and James wishes he could come with them. He wishes he could take the Express, but he leaves the coaches for Gordon and rolls away with a smile, just enjoying the idea. Gordon makes a big show of backing onto the Express and brags to James as he goes. There were many important people on the train, including the Fat Controller, but as Gordon said, he's been doing it for years. He takes off, completely confident, telling James he'll see him tomorrow. James goes back to shunting. He prepares the coaches for another train, and as he backs in, a suspicious noise can be heard. A very quiet hiss and puffs as Gordon sneaks into the station from the back, trying to avoid being noticed. When James sees this, he can't help but joke.
"Hello, Gordon. Is it tomorrow?" asked James.
Gordon didn't answer, just blowing off steam. He had been switched off the main line onto the loop. He had to go all the way around and back into the station. James joked that maybe it was instinct. At this time, the passengers were swarming the booking office demanding refunds. The Fat Controller got their attention with the guard's whistle and promised their train would go on. He asked James to do it, and of course James said yes, that he'll try. The Fat Controller urges him to give it his best, and the coaches say he's pulling them well. Bridges and stations flashed by, and the passengers cheered him on. They thanked him when he made it to the station, and the Fat Controller was very impressed. He told James he could take the Express more often with a performance like that. The next day, James came to the station where Gordon was shunting in his place.
"I like some quiet work for a change," he said. "I'm teaching these trucks manners."
He compliments James's performance with the coaches as well and goes back to bumping trucks. James and Gordon are good friends now, and James sometimes takes the Express in Gordon's place to give him a rest. Review time. The music really isn't anything special here. That's not to say it's bad, but it just doesn't stand out. I do have more things to say about visuals, though. We start off with a night shot. The sheds are lit up, and the only engines we see are Gordon, Henry, and James. And with how big Gordon and Henry are, it does make James look tiny between them, emphasizing his place as the victim in this situation. I can't tell if that was an intentional big brain move, or that's just how things happened. The set dressing for all these sets is great, and there's a little too much going on for me to want to drop it all here. Instead, we'll talk about the people. Firstly, look at them. They're all a little crooked, and they have silly faces. These are the passengers on the platform swarming the booking office. If you look at them as a group, nothing seems off, but if you take a closer look at any single one of them, you'll get a chuckle. I'm not sure if I've worded this correctly, but to me they look both worse and more realistic than the higher quality models. Something about them being a bit scruffier. Might be me, though. The story is an interesting one. We've got 2 characters in this episode. The past 2 episodes were super James focused. This one is James and Gordon. They've got an interesting dynamic because they both do think very highly of themselves. But James is prone to a bit more insecurity, I believe. Gordon is very different because he is objectively correct that he is the best of the best, at least at this point in the series. He is part of the fastest class of steam engines around at the time of this episode, if I'm correct on when this is placed. And yet, he can be humbled anyway. Gordon is still far too arrogant for his own good, but when he makes himself look stupid again, he's a good sport about it. He's shown that he grew since last time we saw him. He is stronger and faster than anyone around, but he also isn't infallible, and here he has learned that. Instead of being jealous when James takes the Express, he's happy for him, and he compliments him on a job well done. He isn't perfect, but he does seem to mean well now. James has his insecurities tempered in this episode, as he proves his worth to himself yet again, to the passengers, and again to the Fat Controller. He is more than a simple mixed traffic engine, and he's worth keeping around. Again, the Fat Controller's proud of him, and offers to let him take the Express sometimes. He's not just part of the team, he is truly valued. We don't see him be cocky once in this episode. When Henry and Gordon pick on him, he tries to argue back, but he can't overcome the two of them. Kinda just accepting defeat and shutting up for the night. He still ends this episode as friends with Gordon, too. He's not holding big grudges. Gordon has been brought down to his level, and he's happy with that. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. My reasoning is that this episode is really good, but the character growth isn't quite as satisfying or intense as the last episode. And for the most part, the music isn't a shining example of peak performance like it was in the last episode. It's worth watching. It's worth rewatching. It's just not quite favorite episode material. The Gordon and James dynamic is really interesting, though, and it's certainly worth giving another shot in a future episode. Oh, I hope they don't mess it up. You got thoughts? Drop them in the comments. Subscribe to see more, and I'll be back in a week. Thanks for watching.